Start a brand. Build an empire. It's the Private Label Podcast.
All over the world, there's people building 6- and 7-figure brands, and they're doing it in their basements and their spare bedrooms, and that is really exciting.
Knowledge, power, inspiration.
I just love the show. It's the right information in the right format. It's perfect.
What we're doing here is not just building a business, we're building a brand. And if you do it really well, you are building an empire.
The guests are top notch. It's my favorite podcast by far. I don't miss an episode.
You see, I'm not the expert, but I can bring the experts to you each and every week on the show.
Now, here's your host with another game-changing guest, Kevin Reiser.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's show. I'm so happy that you've joined us. Kevin here, and I just want to thank you for tuning in. Gosh, we're nearing the end of July. So hard to believe how quickly the summer is just flying by. I hope it has been a good one for you. All right, we've got a really special guest lined up today. I know you're going to enjoy hearing his story, but before we get to that, if you're new to the show, I want to encourage you to check out the Start Here section over at privatelabelpodcast.com. Lots of good stuff for you there. Everything you need to know about the show, about me, and about getting started with your very own private label business. All right, I get asked questions all the time, and one of my favorite things to do is to interact with many of you through Facebook or email or in person at conferences and events and local meetups, things like that. One of the most common questions I get is, Kevin, is there any other way to make money on Amazon? Or is private label really the only thing out there? People often ask if I use any other business models to make money on Amazon. And I've always said no. I dabbled with retail arbitrage for all of 2 days early on in my selling career. But private label has really been the only thing I've focused on. Well, I have a feeling that's about to change because today's guest makes money in an entirely different way on Amazon. He started the business just a couple of years ago, really about the same time that I started selling private label. And this year, his company is set to hit the $8 million mark in sales this year on Amazon, and none of it is through private label. Isn't that exciting? I want to introduce you to the man who makes his living, and a really nice one at that, selling wholesale on Amazon. Please welcome to the Private Label Podcast from the Wholesale Formula, Mr. Dan Metters. Dan, welcome to the Private Label Podcast.
Hey, Kevin, I'm excited to be here. How you doing, man?
Hey, doing really good. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This is a topic that I know a lot of our audience has had questions about because a lot of them have personally asked me, hey, Kevin, what are some other ways I can make money online, some other ways I can make money on Amazon? I can't think of a better resource to turn to than you, my friend. So just to start with, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into wholesale.
Well, we started selling on Amazon in 2011, and we started with retail arbitrage, where we were going into stores and finding products, at big box stores and selling those products on Amazon. And we did that until we were full-time retail arbitrage until about 2014. And we did really, really well. But the problem is it was just our income was just a function of our time. So effectively, everything we were doing was, there was no skill position there. It was we to make more money, we had to work harder. Right. And we were working so much at that point that it was unbelievable. So in 2014, we decided that we wanted to make a change to our business to become more, to make it more of a business rather than a job. And we were looking at the various models. And I'll be honest with you, we did look at private label, and we just weren't smart enough at the time. We didn't have the experience to do it. It was really attractive, but it was just something where we were really uncomfortable. We didn't feel like we could do it. And we gravitated towards wholesale. So what wholesale is we purchase directly from brand owners and sell their products on Amazon. And in 2014, our sales went from, we'd done about 960,000 the year before that in sales. 2014, we went up to 1.28 million.
Wow.
And that was, and that was just 6 months of wholesale added in. We started in July. And then in 2015, we did 3.9 million. in sales, and we were 100% wholesale. We don't do any kind of arbitrage anymore. This year, we're on pace to do about 8 million or slightly more.
That is amazing. What was that? What was the 2013 number again?
Our 2013 number was about 950 or 960,000. It is in that ballpark.
And that was all arbitrage.
Yeah, I call that the sweat equity.
Wow, that is some really, really impressive growth, Dan. And I want to tackle something you said there, that you didn't feel you were smart enough for private label. And I had some experience with retail arbitrage. I haven't yet had any experience with wholesale, but when I think about things like retail arbitrage or wholesale, I think kind of the opposite. I think not only am I not smart enough, but I don't want to work that hard. So I'm really looking forward to learning how you did this. And Empire Builders, I think you'll be very interested in Dan's story and how he has done this as well. And I just want you to know that when Dan says they buy products directly from brand owners and sell them on Amazon, he's not talking about hijacking. So Dan, we have this problem as Amazon sellers of private labeled products, of people buying unauthorized units off of us. For example, if we do a promotion and sell a unit for $1, they might buy that and then list against us on our Amazon listing. You're not talking about that. You actually get permission from the brand owner and actually go through the proper channels, right? Right.
I mean, our goal with everything that we do is to be an authorized seller and ultimately a partner to their brand. So yeah, I mean, it's not something where we get on products or see a product cheap on Amazon and buy it. We actually don't do that at all. Well, what we do is we reach out to the manufacturer, the brand owner, and we ask them, what if you have any kind of wholesale programs or anything that and would want to start selling to us directly. So that's more along the lines of what we're doing.
Really, really interesting. Thanks for that clarification, Dan. So I'm going to hit you with just a couple of questions that are all popping into my mind as we talk through this. First of all, why would a brand owner want to sell to you? Why wouldn't they just list on Amazon themselves?
Well, one of the key factors is that when you start talking about larger scale manufacturing, like companies that distribute their product to brick and mortar stores or big box stores or what have you, they understand that they're not a retailer. Like that fundamentally that they are a manufacturer of products, and also that. To be quite honest with you, we can do a much better job than them at this point. Like we understand the platform, we understand how to drive traffic to products, we understand how to make their listing better. And that's one of the skill sets, honestly, that's one of the skill sets that you guys utilize as private labelers too. I mean, it's really similar, but that's things that they don't want to do. They don't want to learn how to do. And in fact, their concentration is generally on just making their brand better. They focus on brand awareness and brand integrity. And our goal is to help facilitate that and sell their products in a retail fashion.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think you hit the nail on the head, Dan. That's a skill set that people like myself and those listening to us right now already have, because it's just that same strategy, just doing a better job than someone else that doesn't have those skills. That's exactly what we use to sell private label products. Really, it's you're talking about selling the same thing or essentially the same thing as someone else. But if you can do a better job with pictures and copy and everything else, then you can create more opportunities for that product on Amazon. So Dan, you mentioned that most of these people aren't really interested in Amazon because they have so much else going on. A lot of these big brands, Amazon may be a small piece of their overall pie, right? So if they're selling on to Target and to Walmart and every other place you can imagine, they may just not have the time to focus on Amazon.
Right. I mean, it's all about bandwidth at that point. They're looking for, honestly, they're looking for the best brand exposure that they can possibly get. And that's what we try to deliver to them. We're trying to, it's not about, at the end of the day for them and brand owners in general, it's not about just dollars and cents. Their brand is their baby, and they want it to be the best representative as possible. So that's what we bring to the equation, is we bring a better representation of their product to the table.
That kind of explains what's in it for them. Let's talk about what's in it for us, because I know one of the big questions on my mind is, how is there enough margin if I'm buying as a wholesaler and then selling on Amazon? Because I know Amazon's going to take a pretty big chunk between their referral and then the pick, pack, and ship fee. As a private labeler, often I'm buying a product way below what I would buy at if it were a wholesale price. So how do you make sure there's enough margin there?
There's a different cost dichotomy with wholesale. It's like, yeah, the gross margins are definitely tighter than private label, but there's other cost in the private label side. For example, you're paying for, you're paying for sponsored advertisements. If I buy sponsored advertisements, generally the manufacturers reimburse me those costs.
Oh, wow.
Whereas you're paying for positioning, like that's the goal in private label, right?
Right.
You're trying to get your product to page one. You're trying to get it to the top 3 or 4 positions or what have you. We're not paying for that position. Like, I'm not trying to get into that position. I'm just coming into an existing listing that already has great demand, and I'm able to split those sales. So, there is an art to it in terms of, you do have to negotiate with a manufacturer. Like, if you look at that initial price list, some of them are pretty bad, to be quite honest with you. And if you take that at face value, I can understand how the margins seem much tighter. But most of them, when they realize that, what we bring to the table and the value that we're going to be able to add to their brand, they're wanting to give us better pricing because, it's in their benefit to do so.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So let's talk about product selection and where you're looking. Because it's a topic that we spend a lot of time on as private labelers. As wholesalers, how do you find the best products? Is it just scouring Amazon for things that are already selling, or is it some other way?
Well, the traditional means of wholesale is from a private labeler, that you guys are, your whole audience understands this at the core. You guys are looking at Amazon first. The traditional means of wholesale is to find a supplier, go, pilfer through their catalog and hope you find something good. Well, we don't do that. We actually approach it just like the private label crowd. We look at Amazon first and we look for products that fit our criteria. Now, our criteria is that, as a base criteria, is that we can sell a lot of a product. We can sell, we try to sell our products at least 90 times per month, unless they're really expensive. If they're really expensive, I'll take less sales,
right?
Less sales volume. But for the most part, we're just looking to move a lot of units, and that's where we're able to really capitalize, because if we're moving a lot of units, we're able to drive our cost down on the processing side. We're able to drive our cost down on the shipping side. We're able to drive our costs down on the order side, because they're going to reward us for bigger orders. So that's where our gross margins may look different, but we're able to increase the efficiency and drive our cost effectively down to get better margins.
Yeah, I love that. And Empire Builders, you're already hearing so many of the ways from Dan in which wholesaling can be very similar to private labeling in terms of the skill sets, the tools, the processes, but there's some really significant differences too. That's the real value of having an expert like Dan on the show. So Dan, when you reach out to these companies, first of all, how do you even find who to contact? I mean, let's say I found a great product from a pet brand that I wanted to wholesale. I mean, do I just look up the number online, or is there some special secret way of finding out who to contact to get information from them about wholesaling?
We do 100% of our sourcing online. So what we're doing is if we see a product that we like, we look at who makes the product and we start reaching out to their sales department, and they will direct us to the people that we need to talk to inside those companies. Now, another thing about wholesale is, like, once you're able to set up with those companies, the vast majority of it is handled inside the U.S. Like, so it is domestic based, which is faster and cheaper for shipping too. So that was one of the things that we originally did a couple private label products, and it took us so long. We made a lot of mistakes getting the product to market. It took us so long because of waiting to have the product produced and then have it shipped to us and stuff like that. And that was, it was partially us not understanding the process, but that just doesn't happen in wholesale. Like, if I call up a manufacturer and, I'm able to establish an account with them, generally I'll have that product within 5 days.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's really a valuable point, Dan, is that turnaround time, because as you just mentioned with private label, even if you're dealing with a stateside supplier, and I do that a lot with US-based suppliers for private label products, the turnaround time is still months. I mean, I think the shortest I've ever had a private label product from kind of finding it all the way to market is maybe 6 or 8 weeks. And that was really something out of the norm. Usually it's 2, 3, 4, 5 months, especially if there's anything more complex involved. So I really love the fact that what you're saying is the turnaround time. Once you've done the research, you've reached out, you've made contact, you get a deal done, and then you have that product very, very quickly. That's really cool. So let's talk a little bit about the strategy when you are approaching them. With private label, we talk a lot about being a little bit more relationship driven. When you contact a potential manufacturer for a private label product, you don't want to go right for the kill and start talking about price or minimums. Is it more business-like in terms of transactional with wholesale, or do you still have to really gain their trust and build that relationship?
I would say it's even more, it's even more important in wholesale to do that, because you have to understand it from their perspective. Just like, your brands, you really value them, you love them, right?
Right.
They love their brands just the same way. So, and that's the ones that we want to deal with. Those are the companies and manufacturers we want to talk to. So it is very, very relationship oriented. We're constantly, we're trying, our goal is to be able to tell them how we can help them, so they will let us sell their products. So it's, it is very, very relationship oriented.
Yeah, I love that. And when you do that, Dan, what are some of the red flags? I mean, what would be something that if you found that out on the first or second or third call with them, or the first or second email, that you would say, okay, this is not the right fit, let's move on to the next one?
Well, for the most part, for us, it's going to be, if the first hurdle is always getting the account. Like that's the hardest part initially, is getting them to sell to you, basically earning their trust. And then at that point, you're looking at things like pricing and stuff like, as far as red flags, I mean, you're dealing with established companies. I mean, the companies that we're approaching and talking to have been in business for long periods of time. They have reasonably well-known brand, or at least a brand that sells really well on Amazon. We've never actually had any issues with having a supplier not ship us product or something like that. And they're always, if they ship us a product in a damaged fashion or something like that, they reimburse us and give us credit towards our next order. So it's never been an issue on that end. But at that point, it just comes down to pricing. If we can make the pricing work, and then we try to work with them on what our plans are with the product and how we're planning to move forward. And if we can make the pricing fit, that's great. If we can't, then that'll maybe entice us to move on.
Yeah.
But we do reach out back. After we establish contact, we may reach out to them in a few months again and try to go back and see if we can fix whatever prevented us from getting there and getting the right pricing initially.
That's a great tip there, Dan, about the follow-up, because sometimes, businesses change, people change. Maybe the person moves on to a different company and there's a more reasonable person in that sales position 6 months down the line. So great point there about staying in touch and seeing if you can work something out later on. What about the flip side of that? What are some things that you really look for in terms of a company or a product, some real winning signs?
Well, for us at this point, our primary thing is, I told you first, we focus on if we can sell a lot of the product, but we also look for products that protect their brand really well. Like I'm looking for people that have multiple sellers, but not too many, and that their price is relatively consistent. You can look at a product or a software like Keepa or something like that to see how consistent the product's been. And that's what we're looking for, is we're looking for consistent products that sell very well.
Yeah, that leads me right into the next question, Dan, and that is, aren't you worried about people just getting into price wars? So I assume what you mean by companies that protect their brand is maybe they have something like MAP policies in place, or they have specific policies where the people buying from them, have to respect certain pricing. Is that how that works?
Sure. About 25% of our products have MAP pricing. So a good portion of them don't. But what we're looking for, when do you see price wars? You see it usually whenever you have some guy come on with 6 or 8 units and he's just wanting to blow it out. And then you see people start to, people effectively piling into a listing. We want to see people who protect their listings and require a lot from their sellers. So whenever they do that, what tends to happen is their pricing remains consistent, because everybody likes to make money.
Yeah, that's really cool. So once you get a deal, you place an initial order. What's the typical initial order? Are you talking a case or 2 cases, or is it a whole pallet?
That definitely varies a lot from manufacturer to manufacturer. What we've seen to be kind of the league average, if you will, is like around $500 minimum order, as they usually gauge it on dollar value. Mm-hmm. So that, our initial orders, we try to generally pick products where we're going, we understand a month's supply is this many units, And with our initial orders, we may scale that back to 2 week supply or something like that to test out the product and make sure it's everything than we thought it originally would be.
So I'm thinking of so many pros to this type of a business model as you're talking, Dan, and I want to just share them with you and make sure they're right and share them with the audience as well. Empire Builders, I can't wait to hear your feedback in the Facebook group and on the website, privatelabelpodcast.com, on your thoughts on this business model as well. But the two things that just came to mind for me, Dan, is number one, the barrier to entry in terms of financially is so low on this compared to a private label product. I usually tell people that they need at least 1,000 to 3,000 units of something to get started in private label, and that's at a minimum. Then you add on top of that design cost and packaging and sourcing cost and all different types of fees, and it's not unusual for someone to spend 10, 15, 20, 25,000 to get one private label product to market. And what you're telling us is that for a lot of products, you can get in the game with $500. So you could take that same $10,000 and really get started with 20 products if you're wholesaling as opposed to one with private label.
And that's right. And that's generally what we suggest. We usually suggest that people have a kind of a working capital minimum of $2,000 to $4,000. And that gives them an opportunity to buy several products and really flesh out the process of, because there is a dynamic to it where, product, being able to find the correct products and being able to identify those opportunities. You're not great at it at first. That's the thing, is nobody is.
Right.
So we like people to have enough flexibility in their budget to be able to take a few chances to refine their skills. But yeah, as far as getting to market, it's really not expensive. I mean, you're able to test these products out pretty easily.
Well, you don't have as much invested, right? So if you plunk down $500 and get a product and you test it for a month or so and it's just not working, at worst case, you're out $500. You've probably made some of that back because some of that's going to sell anyway, but you're not so invested into that product. The other thing that really came to mind is you talked about you want to start with somewhere between 2 weeks worth of inventory to maybe a month of inventory. One of the big concerns with private labeling is you don't want to run out of stock. And so I always tell people, make sure that you reorder before you run out of your first order. But with you guys, it's not so much of a deal, right? Because the product is going to still continue to sell, even if you run out of stock of that product at Amazon, because presumably there'll be other people that still have it in stock. Is that right?
Right. I mean, ultimately, we don't want to run out of stock either. But what we're doing is we tend to stock for 30 to 45 days, depending on the product. And then we're able to place a reorder. And I told you, like, we're fast to market with our products because we place our order, they're there in our building in 5 days, and we're able to ship them out. Or if you utilize prep centers, it will be at your prep center in 5 days. Wow. And you're able to ship those products out. So it's not, the lag time is just so much different. Whereas, if you're placing an order for a product, they have to physically build your product. The manufacturers and vendors that we have only have this product on hand, ready to ship as soon as I call them.
Yeah, that's really cool. So let's get into the fun stuff, the real exciting stuff. So you've placed the order, they ship it. You mentioned prep centers and warehouses and things like that. Do I have to have my own warehouse to get started in wholesale?
We have a warehouse, but it's one of those things. We actually didn't know prep centers existed whenever we started our warehouse. So now we have all this infrastructure and stuff like that. But if I had to do all over again, I actually wouldn't have a warehouse. I would probably just work out of a home office or something like that and operate in that fashion. But yeah, you don't have to have one now.
That's a great point. And I laugh because I now have a warehouse too, and kind of in a similar boat. I kind of walked into it and later found out that there was other ways of doing it. But for the purposes of those of you out there, Empire Builders, that don't have a warehouse, I wholeheartedly agree with Dan's point. I mean, if you can find a way to avoid going in and spending a ton of money and getting locked into a lease or something like that, do that. So what does that mean, Dan? I guess what that means is in private label, oftentimes our manufacturer is sending the product directly to Amazon for us. In this case, that's not happening. They're sending it to someplace first where you would, are you inspecting it there and then putting labels on it? What are you doing?
Certainly we do have some that ship direct to Amazon for us.
Oh, cool.
It's more or less what we do is if they're really familiar with the process or they've done it before, then we'll have them start shipping direct. But our biggest concern is that, somebody ships product in incorrectly, and it may be just where we are really, really crazy when it comes to rules. We're super rules followers. So I would be skeptical about having them send like a first order there or something like that, because I don't know what kind of dunnage they use. I don't know how they pack their boxes, and I want to make sure that the product is exactly what I want to see or exactly what I'm ordering, particularly for those first orders. But after that, we are comfortable having them ship direct as well.
Nice. And so what type of prep is usually involved? I know it can vary depending on the product, depending on, how they're sending it to you and that type of thing. But in general, are you using FNSKU labels, or do you just go based off of the UPC? Are you doing any type of repackaging into a certain number of pieces per carton? Any special tips on that?
Well, we do. We carry a really wide range of products at this point, and all of our products have different prep. But what we do is, if there's for example, if I buy a product that doesn't need any prep and it's able to be commingled, that's a product that will just go straight to Amazon. We don't have to do anything with it. But, some of like if you're ordering a glass product, we're going to use bubble wrap and stuff like that. It's the same type of prep that you would do. There really is no difference at all.
That's awesome. Okay, so you get the prep done, you send it in to Amazon, they check it in, the same as with our products. What happens next? You mentioned earlier that you don't rely nearly as heavily on things like Amazon-sponsored products. So is it literally just sit back and wait for it to start selling, or is there more involved?
Well, for the most part, you can just wait for it to start selling. But, some of the things that we're going to do is, particularly if the listing's not as good as it could be, we're going to address and make those changes as necessary. But once we get those listings up to speed, once we get everything where we want it, it's as simple as clicking a button, placing our order, sending it to Amazon, and watching it sell.
That is awesome. So I want to ask you to go back in time and remember one of those early experiences, Dan. Do you have a story or a memory from the early days of selling on Amazon and what that felt like to log in and look at that, or maybe to look at the snapshot on your phone and just see those sales continue to go up?
I remember whenever we first started that it's one of those things that it was like, well, we put in $600 and we decided to buy some products because we heard this whole Amazon thing worked. And so we did it. We sent in our product, and I'll be honest with you, I was like, pretty sure I just threw $300 away, and Eric just threw $300 away. But as soon as it hit and we got that first sales notification, it was like, oh my goodness, what just happened?
That's
and
awesome.
Then again and again. And it's just like, wow, this is, it's an unbelievable feeling, because it shouldn't work that way. It shouldn't be that easy to make money online.
Right.
But it is. Like it really is just Amazon makes it as easy as possible for people to make money.
Yeah, absolutely. I still remember the day that I actually logged in to Seller Central and turned off those notifications to my email so that every time something sold, it wasn't emailing me, because there was just too many to keep up with. But certainly in those early weeks and months, it was fun to read through and see where things were being shipped and all of that fun stuff. So once everything is in, they start selling. You mentioned if no changes needed to be made to the listing. We talked about this a little bit earlier. Some of your weapons that you use are the same things that we use as private labelers once something is listed on Amazon in terms of improving the listing. But in this case, you are a wholesaler. You're not the brand owner. So how do you go about making those changes?
Just the exact same way you do. I mean, it's we just go in and submit the case to Amazon to change the title of the product or change the bullets and be able to point them to the manufacturer's website and say, this is why we want to make those changes, and Amazon makes them very easily.
Very cool. So do you ever have a problem with you go in, you improve on some images? Well, two questions. Do you actually submit some of your own images at that point? I mean, do you guys actually take your own, or do you exclusively find images that are already available and pre-approved, that type of thing?
Well, whenever we want better images, we will generally contact them and tell them exactly what we're looking for. We want it on a transparent background. We want these kinds of images. and see if they can get them for us. And more often than not, they will just send us, what we want.
And that's contacting the brand owner, right? Not Amazon, but the actual manufacturer?
Correct.
Okay, awesome. So follow up to that. Do you ever have a problem where maybe you go in, you put some better images in, you tweak the bullets a little bit, maybe you add a call to action down there in the description, and then everything, lo and behold, you come back 2 weeks later and some other seller has changed everything back or made it worse?
Well, if we actually, I've not really had that come up, but if we did, I mentioned our goal is to have a great relationship with the manufacturer. What we would do is we would tell them to send out an email to all of their Amazon sellers to let them know that these changes were in the interest of their company.
Yeah, I mean, Empire Builders, I hope you're starting to see what a killer advantage we have as people that have already navigated this space somewhat in terms of wholesaling, because so many of the skill sets that we have complement this type of a business model so well. I know my brain is already buzzing with possibilities. So how many SKUs do you guys have at this point, Dan?
We actively carry about 500 SKUs or 550 SKUs.
That is amazing. I feel so overwhelmed with my 22 SKUs. I can't imagine 500. That is really, really exciting. So I'd imagine there's probably some tools and things you use to help track that. How much of that daily management is done manually by you or your team versus by software and that type of thing?
Well, I'm going to be particularly honest here and tell you that me and Eric, I told you we slaved away when we were doing retail arbitrage. We actually do very, very little work nowadays for our wholesale business. Like collectively, I'm pretty sure we spend about 15 to 20 hours a week on dedicated to our Amazon business tops. But as far as what we're doing in terms of restocking and how that happens, what we did is we focused on building systems that we could train other people to do. We have a team of virtual assistants that do a very, very good job. We have a few employees who handle all of our contact to and from companies, and then we utilize softwares like Restock Pro. That's a really good one. And what it does is it alerts us, hey, you're low on, because we're not sitting there going through every single line of inventory. That would be so tedious.
Right.
But Restock Pro says, hey, you're getting low on this product. You have about 2 weeks worth of inventory left. And what happens is our guys will check it to make sure that everything's accurate and there's no funny business. And then they'll just call and place the reorder. So it really does become pretty automated.
What would you say is probably the top mistake that you see people, Dan, because you're not just a wholesaler, but for the past year or two, you've also trained other people how to do this exact thing. And that's how we got connected. You and Eric came out to Zon Squad Live last month and really hit it out of the park. Had a lot of incredible feedback on the presentation you gave to our group. So you've had a lot of people, you've watched a lot of people kind of go through this type of business model. What would you say is the biggest mistake you see people make that are just getting started? Honestly,
the biggest mistake I do believe is not truly focusing on building those relationships. Like there's still, people are initially so tied to making it work or making money that they forget that if you build great relationships, you're going to make money. It's going to be much easier to make money. Yeah, I love that. That's why we're able to do a lot of the things that we do. Relationships, and we talk a lot about that on the show. A lot of the guests that we've had, Dan, have reinforced that. So it just gives me kind of further proof and further proves that we're speaking the same language here, maybe a little bit different dialect, but the same language. And all of our audience is already focused on those relationships because they are so crucial, not just in life, but in business as well. So we've talked about how to find the right products, how to get them, how to prepare them, get them to Amazon, tweak the listings. Now things are selling. Let's talk about after the sale. I assume that you're still responsible for responding to customer messages and a certain amount of customer service. Is that right? I'm actually very proud of our VA team. We first off, we go through and we've really focused on developing great templates for the majority. But our VA team handles all of our customer issues, all of our customer refunds, and anything that would come up, they're able to handle. We've empowered them, trained them, and really built just an awesome team. But I'm really proud because of our customer metrics are, I think we answer question, or last time I looked, it was less than 2.5 hours was our average customer response time.
That's great. Yeah. So what about follow-up? Are you guys doing any outreach in terms of automated emails that go out after purchase, soliciting, seller feedback, that type of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things that we added to honestly help our manufacturers out, because some of them actually want product reviews as well. So we may help them with an automated sequence. We currently use SalesBacker and have had nothing but awesome experience with it so far.
That's awesome. Dan, this is really, really good stuff, my friend. I want to get into our Empire Builders round. And then on the flip side of that, we'll let everyone know where we can continue this conversation and learn even more about wholesaling.
Let's take it up a notch. It's time for the Empire Builders round.
All right, first question in the Empire Builders round, Dan. Is there a book that you've read that's had a positive impact either on you personally or on your business, or both?
There's actually 2 books that I always suggest people read, and I feel like it's, they are imperative to, they've definitely helped form a lot of our opinions about business, and that is From Good to Great by Jim Collins.
Great book.
And I love that book. And then we also suggest reading The Goal. It's a book that talks about processing and capacity, which sounds really boring, but they wrote it in the form of a short story, and it's so beautifully written, and it really helps you understand, how you can make your business more efficient. I personally love that book.
Fantastic recommendations, my friend. I haven't read The Goal, so I'll have to add that to my list, but From Good to Great is certainly one of my all-time favorites as well. And talking about getting the right people on the bus and making sure they're in the right seat, one of those analogies that always has really stuck with me. Empire Builders, if you'd like to check out Dan's recommended reads, either of them or both of them for that matter, just go to privatelabelpodcast.com/book, and our friends at Audible will gift you a free audiobook download. Dan, next question. Is there a tool that you can share with us that you're using right now in your business?
This is actually, it's not a physical software. We do use a lot of great softwares, but this was something that we picked up at the Zon Squad Live event, and we had been always focused on having great processes. But at the Zon Squad Live event, there was a speaker who talked about building SOPs and standard operating procedures. Well, we really took it to heart. When we got back, we focused on documenting our processes. And ultimately, it was so revealing, because you find out all the places that you're operating inefficiently, and you're able to address those. So that would be the one suggestion is really focus on building SOPs and documenting your procedures.
I love it, my friend. Documenting your processes, building SOPs, really can be a very powerful thing. Definitely something I need to do a better job of as well. Empire Builders, if you'd like a link to anything that we discuss on today's show, just go to privatelabelpodcast.com, click on the show notes section for today's episode. Dan, final question in the Empire Builders round. If the audience takes just one thing away from our conversation here today, what would you hope that would be?
I think the most important thing with any business is that you just take action. Don't be afraid to operate outside of your comfort zone, because I can honestly tell you that whenever we started our wholesale business, it was pretty uncomfortable at first because it was something we were just unfamiliar with, but it has changed our business and our lives. And it took a little bit of courage and a little bit of just kind of making that leap, but it's just been magnificent. So I would say just take action.
Just take action, and don't be afraid to operate outside of your comfort zone. I love it, my friend. I'm so glad that you took that action those couple of years ago. Really, you guys started into wholesale about the time that I started private labeling. What a ride it has been. Hey, Dan, thank you so much, my friend, for coming on today. I hope you'll come back, and I know that you've got some free training that you want to make available to our audience, which is just so generous. Empire Builders, if you want to find out more about Dan and Eric from the Wholesale Formula and check out the free training, the free videos that they have available, you can do that. We've created a link at privatelabelpodcast.com/wholesale. That's privatelabelpodcast.com/wholesale. I know, Dan, that you've agreed to do a webinar, so Empire Builders, be on the lookout for that as well. We're going to get Dan and Eric on a webinar and do some more free training and pick their brains on and learn some more about this wholesale stuff, which is just so exciting. Dan, thank you so much, my friend. Really enjoyed it.
Hey man, it has been an absolute pleasure, and I've had a lot of fun having this conversation with you.
Awesome. The pleasure has been all mine. I hope you'll come back.
I definitely will.
All right. So what did you think of my conversation with Dan? I am so excited. I'm telling you, my head is just buzzing right now with ideas of how to get started with wholesaling on Amazon and how much opportunity there is, particularly because I already have some great relationships with some companies that I may be able to take advantage of. And as Dan shared with us today, I and likely you too already have so many of the skill sets that are necessary when it comes to selling wholesale on Amazon. But there is a lot that I don't know. And so that's why I'm so grateful that Dan has offered to share a free series of videos that can help me and you learn more about getting started with a wholesale business selling on Amazon. We've linked to that from privatelabelpodcast.com/wholesale. Again, that's privatelabelpodcast.com/wholesale. There'll be a place there where you can get more information and also register for a webinar. If you enter your email address there, I'm going to be hosting Dan and his business partner, Eric, very, very soon on a free webinar just for you guys, just for Empire Builders. And we'll get to ask them some more questions and find out more about this opportunity. So if you want to check any of that out, again, privatelabelpodcast.com/wholesale.
If you're looking for actionable tips and tricks to get into your own private label business or to take your business to new heights, don't miss an episode of the Private Label Podcast's Listen and Learn. Each Wednesday, we'll tackle a topic to enhance and improve your private label business building skills. Look for new episodes each and every Wednesday and check them all out online, along with video tutorials and downloadable PDFs at privatelabelpodcast.com.